Before we start, next. Before we start, make sure you have a proper internet connections and you are sitting in a quiet and comfortable room. Also, please change the name to the following template: name and then followed by your institution. Also, make sure to turn off the microphone and please use the chat box or raise hand features whenever you would like to speak. And this session will be delivered in English. I am Inatul Fitri. You can call me Inaya, and I will be the host for today. Next slide, please. Yeah, before we dive into our book club, let me just explain to you what is Monef Book Club. So, Monef Book Club is part of Monef 4.0 ecosystem, a place for regular learning for M&E. We facilitate consistent series of M&E discussion, whereas learners, professionals, or practitioners can share their knowledge, building teamwork, as well as creating opportunities and deepen M&E through shared learning. Next slide. So let's get to know about Monef Studio and Monef 4.0 ecosystem. Monef Studio is an organization specializing in monitoring and evaluation. We put forward inclusive learning features with professional practitioners. We also promote digitalizations of process and collaborative works among learners and practitioners. Also, we encourage people to believe in better performance and development outcome. Next slide. So the public literacy and professionalizations of inclusive monitoring and evaluation can be found through Monef 4.0 applications. We have various applications and products that you can access, and Monef 4.0 provides various products such as Monef Safari, Monef Papers, Monef Chat, Monef Career, and so on. You can also download our applications, and it's available on iOS and Android. Next. Now, before we learn and deeper about our book today, let us meet our first speaker, which is Max Sibanda, PhD candidate. He is our associate at Monef Studio Global, specializing in migration evaluations and PA. Max is a researcher and development evaluation practitioner with an academic background in public policy analysis, local government, and international migrations. He has extensive experience in research and teaching, as well as brings strong commitment to justice and socioeconomic development within a particular focus in the Global South. Next, we have Pak Gregorius Daan Vincent Patinasari, PhD. He is also our associate at Monef Studio, who specializes in PF and RCT expert and also an econometrician. He is a senior advisor with managerial experience in development partner institution, demonstrating strong capability in leading and guiding research. He is very skilled in designing and implementing fiscal decentralization programs, and he is also well known and recognized for strong research, analytical, and advisory skills. Next. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can enjoy our book club today. As we mentioned before, the book is Development as Freedom, authored by Amartya. Next. On the first session, we would like to invite Max Sibanda to give us the book introductions. To Max, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Inaya, for the invitation, and greetings to everyone. Good afternoon and good morning, wherever you are. And thank you for Monef Studio for organizing this platform, for discussing relevant texts, especially regarding to development, but also most importantly regarding to monitoring and evaluation. So today we are looking at a very pivotal contribution to development research, development theory, Amartya Sen. And Amartya Sen is one of those authors, one of those theorists, especially with regards to development, but in a wider the social science disciplines that he has contributed immensely, especially with this particular text that we are reviewing today, Development as Freedom. So just to understand the contributions, I thought it was necessary to briefly talk about the context within which his work is set. Amartya Sen was born in India, still very much a colonized territory under British colonialism in India in 1933, in the heart of the Great Depression, as you can imagine. And then he studied there, especially specializing in economics. And then from there, at a later stage, he was employed at Ivy League universities in Oxford, Cambridge, and later on Harvard, where he still is very much alive and working. So when you look at the type of economist Amartya Sen was or is, some people have tried to classify him as either a very mainstream neoclassical economist. Some have said that even though he is classical, he's not as classical an orthodoxy as some economists, but he has contributed to a lot of heterodoxy uh, uh, issues, especially with regards to how politics, how public decisions impact issues like welfare, issues like development. So he's very important in that regard, that he tries to struggle between different variants of economics. As we understand, development, especially development theory, started really as a very hardcore economics discipline. Then later on, it was critiqued by different disciplines to include different aspects that mainstream economics did not think was very, very important. So Amartya Sen comes to us from this perspective, where he focuses mainly on welfare economics, social choice theory, and development, and focusing on issues like poverty, famine, and human well-being. Again, the academic context in which Amartya Sen worked in the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s is very important, in the sense that when you look at development theorization in that time, it was dominated by this state-centric theorization, whether be it your modernization theory or your dependency theories. These were state-centric theories that were looking at development from a state perspective, state planning perspective, in which economic growth and geopolitics were very much important, and things like welfare and social services were seen as peripheral, or even at some point antithetical to the productive mechanisms of economic growth. So again, after the clash between these two, dependence theory and modernization, there was, of course, the Washington Consensus that instituted structural adjustment programs in different so-called developing countries or the third world, depending on the era in which we're talking. These, of course, failed spectacularly. They created a lot of misery in terms of social services in different countries. So Amartya Sen's work is at the work of all these developments. And during the time when he was writing this in the 90s, there was an advancement of post-development, really disenchantment with development theory by people like Ettore Escobar, by people like James Ferguson. We're talking about development being this anti-politics machine, or trying to look at development as it is encountered by people that are supposedly being developed. And then also Sen was a contemporary, academic contemporary of people that were pioneering what is now regarded as development sociology, people like Norman Long and James C. Scott that were looking at development from the perspectives of individuals and communities, especially rural communities. Scott worked a lot in Malaysia looking at how the modernization of agriculture was actually creating a lot of misery for peasant farmers there. So looking at issues like how do these peasants fight back the weapons of the weak, for example, and Norman Long focused on actor-centered approach. So Amartya Sen, next slide. Amartya Sen comes within that space where there's a lot of disenchantment with mainstream development theorization. And he focuses on a lot of issues before he starts writing this book of development as freedom. He focuses on issues of ethics, on issues of capabilities, on issues of collective choice, in terms of how does individual choice interact with communal or public choice, issues of standards of living, issues of famine. So in a sense, he was a man of his time. He was a scholar of his time, in which case he was sensitive to all the theoretical disenchantment and all the theoretical development that was happening at that time, trying to bring individuals and communities into development planning and development thinking. And then that is why around 1996, 1997, he was invited by the World Bank to come and become a presidential fellow, essentially advise the World Bank how to approach development, because this Washington consensus that was being pushed by the World Bank and IMF, it had actually failed. So they tried to ask to bring him in for him to assist how then to turn this around. And then he offered about 5 lectures, the bulk of which have become central to the themes in the book that we're looking at today, Development as Freedom. And then between 1996 and 1999, when Development as Freedom was published rather, Amartya Sen also was rewarded the Nobel Peace Prize, the Nobel Prize rather, of in economic science, especially in his work in welfare economics, being recognized that he's someone that tried to push these development theories to impact communities and impact individuals in different countries. Next slide. So when we get into the book itself is, like I say, belongs to its context. It touches themes and theories and sentiments that were part of that era in the 90s, where development was seen as something that was really failed because it was focusing on these macro structures and the belief that economic growth has to be grown from top down, and then somehow the benefits will trickle down to individual communities. So Amartya Sen turns this around, and this core message really is that development should also be seen from the perspective of enabling individual freedoms, enabling what individuals can do and be as a result of these entitlements, these benefits that they experience in their context. Therefore, this was a turnaround, the focus on freedoms, different types of freedoms. Of course, throughout the book, we tries to unpack what it means by freedom. It classifies freedoms into substantive and instrumental freedoms. Substantive freedoms talking essentially to human agency, different types of enablements that an individual can actually enjoy. But instrumental freedoms being the contextual rearrangement, what is available in the context in terms of politics, in terms of markets, in terms of social arrangements that a free agent can utilize to realize the well-beings that he or she has a reason to value. So that's why he tried to come up with a new definition of development, being that development is the process of expanding these real freedoms, or what is called capability sets, in which then individuals can utilize and expand their functionings. And then you also reconceptualize issues of poverty, looking at poverty not only as the lack of income, a lack of uh, basic incomes, but as the deprivation in capabilities. That these people are constrained because they have got a lot of unfreedoms in the context, but they also have got a lot of innate unfreedoms that make them not enjoy, not realize different functionings, different beings and doings that they have reasons to value. So these kind of arguments are centralized in what today is called the capability approach, that the book really tries goes to length to explain this capability approach, where it looks at the capabilities, this collection of freedoms, the agency, from the agency to the contextual enablement, creating this set of things that an individual can be able to do and be, and then the functionings, these are realized well-beings, chosen by the individual themselves, situated in specific context. So this is a very crucial aspect of the book. Next slide. So this is just a breakdown of the themes of the book. Like I said, looking at freedoms from as ends of development, but also as a means of development, the capabilities, the functions, and also poverty, the reconceptualization of poverty. The greater part of the book really unpacks what Amartya Sen calls these instrumental freedoms. These are 5. I'm sure my colleague will go deeper into it. Next slide. But briefly, to talk about these freedoms as a constitutive element of development, which is really the core message of Amartya Sen. These are the different types of freedom, the substantive and the instrumental freedoms. Like I say, the substantive freedoms talks to the agency, being healthy, being educated, being free from illiteracy, being free from ill health. And then the instrumental freedoms talks to the context. So with that, I think I will then yield the stage to my colleague because he's going to expand a little bit more on this. My job was just to introduce, to put this book in context so that we can be able to understand different aspects, different arguments that Amartya Sen was making, but most importantly, to see the value of his contribution in the space in which development theorization and development practice was really at an impasse. I think the last stage, the last slide has to do with the relevance in monitoring and evaluation space, and also the takeaways, which again, my colleague will into it. Yeah, I think there was an interruption there. Yes. Otherwise, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will discuss more, I think, in the discussion in the question and answer sessions, but this is what I would say as a way of introducing this very important contribution to development theory, but also monitoring and evaluation.
All right. Thank you very much, Max, for your introduction about the book. Let's move on into the next slide. All right, now we would like to invite Pak Gregorius Daan Vincent Patinasari, PhD, as our book reviewer today. Pak Daan, thank you for joining us. and the stage is yours. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Inaya and Max. Following Max's presentation of the more conceptual chapters, I'd like to take us to the lighter and more practical discussion. And that is how sense idea in the development and freedom should shape the way we carry out monitoring and evaluation. One F. But uh, can I have the slides, please? Good. Good. Let me start with a simple question. If a country becomes richer, does that automatically mean that people are healthier, that children stay in school, that families live safely with dignity? According to Amartya Sen, the answer is not necessarily. And this is exactly the starting point of his famous book, Development as Freedom. Sen's main message is actually very simple as well as very powerful. He says that development is not mainly about income, economic growth, or how many projects we build. Instead, development is about whether people have the real freedom to live the lives they value. Let me repeat, whether people have the real freedom to live the lives they value. This means that development is just not about how much money people earn or how big the economy is, but about whether people truly have safety, dignity, opportunity, and meaningful choices in their daily lives. Therefore, the core question to the development changed from how much did we spend to did people's real lives improve in meaningful way? These real freedoms are what Sen calls capabilities. I think Max has mentioned this before. In simple terms, capability means people's real chances in life, the genuine opportunity to be healthy, to be educated, to work with dignity, and to participate in fully society. So development is successful not when service exists, but when people can truly use those services to build better lives. Next to the in Development as Freedom, Amartya Sen examined that people's real freedoms depend on 5 interlinked factors. Those are one, first, political freedoms. This is about voice, participation, and elections. If people cannot speak freely or hold leaders accountable, the other freedoms are fragile. Second, economic facilities. This means access to jobs, markets, credit, and productive resources. Without economics access, people may be formally free but practically trapped. Third is social opportunities. This refers to education and healthcare. This directly shape whether people can convert income and service into real capabilities, into real life outcomes. Fourth, transparency guarantees. This is about trust, openness, and freedom from corruption. If systems are opaque and corrupt, people lose confidence, access becomes unequal, and freedom shrink. And the fifth is protective security. This includes social protection, safety nets, and protection from extreme hardship. So the one shock does not destroy a person's entire life. But again, the keyword here is interlink, meaning that these 5 freedom types do not work in isolation. Sense key message here is simple. This freedom reinforce each other. If one collapses, the other weaken too. Before this book, development success was often judged mainly by GDP growth, income levels, and industrial expansion. If those numbers were rising, development was assumed to be happening. Sand challenged this logic directly. He argued that growth has little meaning if people still cannot live healthy, educated, secure, and dignified life. So this book changed the fundamental question of the development. Is the economy growing? Are people real freedom actually expanding? This presentation focus on chapter 2 to 4 of the book, Development as Freedom. This chapter explain what freedom really means, how it is shaped by social, economic, and political systems, and why growth alone is never enough. Most importantly for us, is these ideas help us to rethink and strengthen the way the monitoring and evaluation is designed, implemented, and used to assess real-world challenges. Next slide on chapter 2. Yes. In chapter 2, Sen makes a very clear distinction, and this has been mentioned by Max, between ends and means. He says that development is not just about higher income or more projects. Money, infrastructure, and services are only the means, not the final goods. The real goal remains the same, whether people can live the lives they value. So roads, schools, hospitals, and cash transfers only matter if they truly can change how people can live, not just because they exist. San give us three simple, powerful ideas. First is capability. This is what people actually are able to do or be in real life. Second, functioning. This is what people actually achieve, such as being healthy, being educated, and being food secure. And third, the key insight is that having resources does not automatically mean better life outcomes. The same support can lead to very different realities. Now, let me give you an example. A family receives the same cash assistance. In location one, food is affordable and market works, so family can become food secure. In location two, food prices are very high, so family remains food insecure. In sense terms, cash programs aims to expand people's capability, and that is their real opportunity to be food secure. In location one, the capability becomes real functioning. The family actually becomes food secure. In location two, the functioning does not materialize because conversion factors, local food price is too high. The freedom that fails here is economic freedom. Remember that Sen has 5 types of freedom, and one that is fair is the economic freedom. The market does not allow people to turn cash into food. So M&E cannot stop at input or cash delivered. We must measure the way people actually achieve functioning the program aims for. Let me skip the second example, and then I will follow up with this. This is why M&E cannot stop at counting school completion, but we must assess what education actually enables people to do and realize. This brings us to directly to the M&E message of chapter 2, which is M&E must go beyond budget spend, facilities built, or people covered, and instead ask, are people actually healthier? Are they become more food secure? Are they living more dignity, safety, and opportunity? In sense language, M&E must measure capabilities and functioning, not just delivery. Let's go to Malala's example. Yes. Now let us look at the real-world example of capability, functioning, and the type of freedom involved using the story of Malala Yousafzai. Malala's story helps us to understand Sen's idea of capability. In Sen's terms, capability means having the genuine opportunity to do or be something. In the case of Malala, the real opportunity to go to school and safely. She valued education, and school existed, but she didn't have the real freedom to attend because of a threat from the Taliban, the Pakistani Taliban. Her basic protective security, the freedom to live without fear and violence, was violated. And without this foundation, the other freedom simply couldn't exercise. Functioning, on the other hand, is the achievement itself. Actually being educated and actually speaking out, and that is what functioning for Malala is. And for years, Malala could not achieve these functionings because her capability was restricted. Only when her safety improved did she gain the freedom to convert her rights to education into actual functioning. I hope you can understand what Sen means by capability and functioning here. Okay, and let us go to slide number 3, to chapter 3. Chapter 3 takes Sen's argument one step further. He says that development is not only about what people have, but also about what they can actually do with what they have. And that depends heavily on the institution and social condition around them. Sen uses the word agency, meaning people's ability to take choices and act on what they value. But agency alone only works when environment supports it, when school, clinics, markets, and public institutions actually functioning. So even capable people cannot succeed if the system blocks them. And this is where chapter 3 connects back to the ideas of capability and functioning from chapter 2. Agency and function and institutions are what determine whether people's capability, the real opportunity, is meaningful, and whether that capability can convert it into functioning and actual life outcomes. In simple terms, institutions shape whether capabilities exist, are usable, and agency shapes whether people can act those capabilities. Together, they decide whether people achieve the functioning they value. Let me give you an example. Two pregnant women receive the same health voucher, or in our case, in the Indonesian case, maybe BPJS. In area A, the clinic is nearby. It has staff and it is affordable. She is able to use the voucher, and she has a safe delivery. In area B, the clinic is far away. Transport is limitation, and the staffs are shortage there is the shortage of staff in the hospitals. So even with the same voucher, she faces the high-risk delivery. So both women receive the same benefits, but their outcomes differ because the institutional condition differs. This is sense points. Agency cannot work if service don't work. Okay. In the second example, sense remind us that oh, I'm sorry. Second example is about voice and participation. There are two communities in which they are invited to the same development meeting. In community A, people can speak freely, participate, and influence decisions. In community B, they are excluded because of local power relations. So invitation are the same, but the actual agency, the real freedom to be heard, is completely different. San remind us that without genuine voice and participation, people cannot shape the decision that they that affect their lives, even if the formal process looks inclusive. For MNE, this means that we cannot only ask, did people receive support, but we must also ask were people actually able to use that support, and did institutions or power structure allow them to benefit. And this brings us to the chapter 4. The next slide, please. Chapter 4 shifts the conversation from income poverty to something more deeper. Sens argues that poverty is not just about having too little money. Poverty is about lacking basic capabilities to live with dignity. Sens explains that income is not one input. It's not only one input. What really matters here is whether people have capability, the real freedom to be well nourished, to be healthy, and to be educated and to live safely. The functioning is the outcome, actually being healthy, actually being nourished, actually having children in school. And the key insights here is that escaping income poverty does not automatically mean escaping real deprivation. To give you an example, consider two households that are both classified as non-poor. Household A can easily reach a clinic. Their children are immunized, and they receive treatment when they fall ill. So although they are non-poor, they are also enjoy real health capability, the freedom to be healthy. Household B, on the other hand, has no nearby clinic. Transport is expensive and treatment is delayed. So perceive, and even though their income classification is not poor, uh, but they cannot get the health service that they want. Okay, and this has a very important implication for monitoring and evaluation is that if we are rely on income, consumption, or poverty line alone, we will miss the real picture. MNE must ask, are people actually healthy? Are children actually attending school? Do families do have housing and secure livelihoods? And I think I will stop here. And I have another slides that compile the message for monitoring and evaluation, but I will skip that and continue that in the discussion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Pak Daan, for your explanations. Let's move on to the next slide, please. And then next. Okay, everyone, now let us discuss today's book. However, before we discuss even more, there are several questions that we have gathered from some of our participants, and let's reveal them into the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the first questions, Max and Paraan, as well as our participants, the first question mentioned that which should be prioritized, individual freedom or economic growth? And how can we achieve development that centers on individual freedom while using economic progress as its instrument? Perhaps I will give the floor to Padaan first.
Okay. Uh, am I on here? Okay. Yes. Yes. It is good. It is good and a very clever question. Which should be prioritized, whether individual freedom or economic growth? Well, if you ask Sam, the answer will be individual freedom, and economic growth will come later on. But it all depends on the country itself, right? Because if we talk about economic growth, we talk about the country as a whole. So what is the government priority in this case? Whether it's economic growth and in which most of the country decided to do so, or individual freedom in which I think only the countries in like Sweden, Norwegian, or those in the North European will do so. But yes, again, it all depends on the government, which are the choices that they will prioritize. So, but again, if individual freedom is the choice that the government picked, then it might lead to economic growth at some point. I think I'll stop here and I will give that to give it to Max.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I think this is really, if Amartya Sen were to formulate a research question for his book, I think this will be it. Yeah, yeah, because historically, the context from which he was writing, economic growth was evaluated, valued more than individual freedoms. So I concur with my colleague about the premise of freedom, but also to also add that when you look at Amartya Sen's work, even his PhD in 1959, published in 1960, was about the choice of techniques in development planning. What do you choose? Do you choose capital intensive or do you choose labor intensive techniques? Essentially, do you move with the people or leave them behind and come and collect them later when the economy is developed or not? So, but when you read also between the lines, development as freedom, you find that this insistence that expansion of freedom is constitutive to to development, right? The expansion of freedom and the removal of unfreedoms. So I would also say that removal of economic unfreedoms is also constitutive to development, the same way as expansion of human freedom is. So to Amartya Sen, development is not valuable if it leaves people behind. So economic growth has to carry people along, has to at the same time expand individual freedom, make people participate in that economic growth, in the achievement of that economic growth. So I think essentially it may not necessarily be or promote individual freedoms first and do nothing about economic growth, and then later on you do something about economic. I think it's a thing of being mutually reinforcing. As you work on the economic activities and the economic context, also make sure that people are part of it and they are expanding their freedom to participate in the economy, but also to be free agents to choose whatever they want to do with the economic possibilities.
All right, Max and Paraan, that's very interesting actually to get to know, which one should prioritize first or which one should we improve first. Yes, Nico, Faisal, you want to say something? Okay, I think that is not. All right. So let us move on to the second questions. That is, what does it mean for people to have the real freedom to live the lives they value, not just higher income? I think I can start with Max here.
Okay. What does it mean for people to have the real freedom to live the lives they value, not just higher income? Higher incomes are important. I think it was mentioned over and over. Also, when you read the book, this Sen makes the point that he's not saying that economic growth is not important. Increased income is not important. Industrialization is not important. They're all important. But what is essential, especially when we talk about development, is what people can do within that context, can do with high incomes. If you have got high incomes in an unfree environment, politically or socially or otherwise, there's nothing you can do. I think the story of Malala also puts things into perspective to say maybe it was not clear whether she had the means to go to school, but I think we can infer that probably that was the case, that she could have had the opportunity and the means to go to school, the money to go to school, but without the freedoms to choose to do this, to choose to realize this well-being, valued well-being of hers, she could not do this. Right? So I think higher incomes are only important if they can uh, make people realize they can operate within a free environment, within a context in which people can realize the beings and the doings they have reasons to value. I think that's all I can say for now.
Yeah, thank you, Max, for your answer. Paraan, would you like to add Max remarks?
No, I think he has mentioned the points that I would like to make as well. But let me give you like give me back give us take back to one of the example that I mentioned in the presentation is that uh, even for people who are not poor, but if they don't have access to in my case is the health facilities. So what does it mean? Because they cannot live the types the health status that they want to get. So yes, both higher income is good and is like a prerequisite, but you have also the freedom to do whatever you want with the life. I think I will stop there.
Okay, thank you very much, Paraan. Well, before we move on to the next questions, there is a question from Ibu Umi. How about the case in China, Vietnam, or Singapore? Just would like to confirm, Ibu Umi, does this questions refer to the first questions or the second questions, Ibu Umi?
I think related to the first questions.
Okay, yeah. So for the first questions, perhaps, Paraan, I think you're ready with this.
Okay, let me let me give you an example of some anecdotal notes, but not only anecdotal, but this is from discussion with President from China. Is that they are rich. The government is rich, but the people itself are not that rich. For example, the cost of raising one child is really high there, right? Because and let's say the formula for the babies, only very rich people can attain that, can achieve a good types a good quality baby formula. But for most of the people, they just have to consume their local produce baby formula, and that local produce baby formula has a very low quality, and sometimes it has adverse effect on their children. So that's why it's not China looks good in overall, and but if you go uh, the to the real people, so it's not that the picture is not that good. Yeah, I think I'll stop that. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe if I can also come in there, I think Amartya Sen also gives the example of China. Of course, he gives the example of China in the 90s. Things have already changed. But also he mentions that when you look at, for example, India and China, the difference that he gives is that in China, even though look at maybe before 1989, when they started to adopt essentially this, you know, uh, state capitalism, there was essentially an expansion in the social services like education and health. I cannot confirm this, but that's what it says. So to such an extent that when the market started to expand and improve, people could actually make use of it. People could actually take advantage of it. So he was also mentioning that because of this expansion in the education and stuff, this was advantageous to the people. It was a form of freedom in a sense. But I think the point that has already been made that essentially a lot of people don't experience the freedom in China even today. Even though they have got maybe access to economic opportunities, access to income, sometimes there are certain constraints and freedoms that still persist. I wanted also to give maybe the example of the US from two perspectives. From Amartya Sen's perspective, he also gives the difference between, for example, Black Americans or African Americans in the US. That if you look at different, for example, measurements of well-being, you'll find that people in India, maybe in some parts of China, they've got higher well-being measurements compared to even life expectancy compared to Black Americans, regardless of the fact that at that time America was rich. These people had access to jobs and stuff like this, but they didn't. They had a lot of other unfreedoms that made it that did not make the economic growth worthwhile in terms of achieving the things and thing and the doings that they had reason to value, but also from the other perspective, I study migration myself, you see a lot of Black Americans moving out of America, emigrating to, for example, West Africa, like Ghana, for example, has received a lot of Black Americans. You would ask yourself why? Because the United States clearly is richer than Ghana. Why would they be moving? And a lot of people, when you talk to them, they're talking about freedom. They're talking about self-actualization. They're talking about, oh, I'm happy, I'm free, I'm recognized. I feel my dignity is restored by coming here. So it's clearly there is more to well-being and development from the perspective of an individual than just economic growth and access to economic opportunities.
Yeah. Thank you, Max, for your answer. Parahan, would you like to add some more?
Uh, no, I think no, I think that they will make it.
All right, so let's move on to the third questions. I think these questions give us a hint about a philosophy or a way of life because the questions mention, do people truly have the capability to live the kind of life they value, or do they only have theoretical access to services without real usability? What do you think about this one, Max?
I think, yeah, it could also be asked, do people really, are people really developed, right? Because from a development studies perspective, of course, now we're using critical development theory lenses. Um, this is, I think, an existential question to say, yeah, are people really developed, especially even within the concept of Amartya Sen of freedom, right? Are people really living the lives and doing things they have reasons to value, or they are being maybe they're being part of this machine. They're just cogs in a machine, right? So this is an existential question. But at the same time, I think development is a process, is a zone of that we should aspire towards. So the process of expanding these freedoms, I think it does not end. I think we will not say, well, we have sufficiently expanded freedoms, now we'll stop. So I think this question can be answered by that the process of expanding freedom really will go further and further. And it also depends on the standpoint of various people, because as individuals, we have got personal conversion factors that influence how we access resources, that influence how we access opportunities, even within similar circumstances. That's why issues of inequality, global inequality, are still a very much important themes today, because we're looking at, even if the world has become so rich, as Amartya Sen noticed, we still have a lot of people that are living below the the beings and doings that they've risen to value. They are not living the best lives, even with all the wealth in the world. So this is an existential question here.
Okay, let me add. If you remember my earlier part of my presentation, San also mentioned 5 types of freedom, right? And that is the political freedom, the economic facilities, social opportunities, transparency and guarantees, as well as protected security. So basically, people can get the types of life that they value. But again, these are the 5 types of freedom that should be available and should not block the lives of the people. Because if one is blocked, so then it may not be materialized uh, the the life kind of live that they value. I think yes, there are a lot of prerequisite to go to the life, the kind of life they value. So, and one of them is the 5 types of freedom that San mentioned in his book.
All right, thank you so much, Para and Max. We just have a questions from Ibu Umi. How about Abraham Maslow theory on hierarchical on needs?
Okay, that reminds me on my first grade at the college. Maslow something like in the 50s, right? So, but it's still relevant. Although more or less the thinking of Sen is more or less also uh, is not reflected, but also based on Maslow, the five level of what do you call it, the needs of the people, right? But he goes further because Maslow is in the 40s or 50s, while this development and freedom as freedom is in the 90s. And also, if you look at the maybe part of the uh, Chance theorem right now, it has changed because of let's say the internet availability and that kind of things, right? But again, if I have to say something about that, so I think the the types of the proposed theorem by Amartya Sen in his book is also based on partly is based on Maslow theorem. Max, if you want to add.
Thank you, Pak.
All right, thank you very much, Padaan and Bumi, for the questions. I think that marks for our discussion session for
Mm.
today. So let us move on to the next slide. And I would like to give you concluding remarks from our discussion today. Well, as someone who is also interested in development, especially with policy development, I think that sense have still relevant to today's world. Although the book was developed back in the early 2000 or back in the 90s, I think it's still relevant to today. So, from what we can learn today is that enabling individuals and realizing that they are capable of understanding freedom is actually part of the process to gain that types of development. So, as Max mentioned before, freedom is not only the ends of development, but it is important. It is a process of expanding the freedom itself. So, development and freedom, it never ends. And people have different values on freedoms and also development. That also brings us into what extent does it mean to become freedom, whether it's financially, whether it's in terms of education, social, or culture. And as Parad mentioned, yes, people have their own stance or their own opinion about freedom. Whether the five types of freedom that Sense mentioned in the books actually fit into the category, at the end of the day, we can actually put that in our life and make sure that at least from the categories such as political, economic, social opportunities, and transparency guarantees is part of our own freedom, which is somehow, I think it's really, really good on that. And also, there are several types of factors that can contribute to how a development and freedom change or evolve, whether it's the political situations, the country, the sociopoliticals, the cultures, perhaps like Malala, for example, she didn't have that kind of freedom to get education, but once she was, let's say, being freed from her country and able to gain knowledge at Oxford, as we know today, she can have that kind of privilege, and not everyone could actually have that. And I think the idea of freedom and also development remain a very strong homework for all of us because we are trying to ensure that freedom and development are equal to everyone else. Well, I think that's all for today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for today. All right, before we end this session, let us take pictures. Next slide, please. Okay, today we have Stefan. He will help us to take the pictures. Stefan, are you ready?
Ready, Kak.
Okay, by your lead, Stefan.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please turn on your camera. Okay, wait. Okay, in 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more. In 3, 2, 1.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you
thank
very
you
much,
everyone.
Stefan and everyone.
Thank
Well,
you, Pak Daan,
that
Max.
marks the end of our session today. Thank you so much, Max and Padaan, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. Hopefully, one day we can be one of you in the future. And let's hope that MNE in Indonesia and in Africa or Asia will thrive and hopefully sense whatever sense had shared us today, it's still relevant. And hopefully, we can be one of their agents to have a change in the future. Thank you, everyone. Terima
Amin.
kasih.
Thank you,
Terima
Thank you
everyone.
everyone.
kasih, Pak
Terima
Daan,
kasih
Max.
pada
Bye.
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 Max, everyone. Bye.